And let's begin arm knitting. So you're no longer going to need the tail of yarn, so you can move that out of the way. We're just going to be working with the working yarn, which is the one attached to the skein of yarn. So hold the working yarn in your right hand, take that first stitch, pull it over and off of your hand and over that working yarn while still holding the working yarn in your right hand. And you've now created this new loop here, which is a new stitch. You're going to turn that towards yourself, okay, and put it onto your left arm. Now to tighten this first stitch can be kind of tricky, it's kind of messy, and you can pull on the working yarn, but it's really not going to do much. So you want to push this knot up here while pulling on that working yarn, and just keep doing that until it's nice and tight. And then let's arm knit our second stitch. So we have the working yarn in our right hand again. You're going to take that next stitch, you're going to pull it over and off of your hand while still holding onto that working yarn. Turn that towards yourself and place that onto your left arm. Tighten that up by pulling the working yarn. Okay, so now we've arm knitted 2 stitches and we have to do that to the other 6. We're just moving all of the stitches over to our left arm, creating new stitches. So hold the working yarn in your left hand again, take that first stitch, or the next stitch I should say, and pull it over and off of your hand, over that working yarn, creating this new loop here. And you're going to turn that towards yourself and place it onto your left arm. Remember to hold the working yarn in your right hand, pull the next stitch over and off of your hand and over the working yarn, creating a new loop there. Turn that towards yourself and place it onto your left arm. And go ahead and do that to the rest of the stitches. And once you get the hang of this, you can move very quickly and have a scarf done in 30 minutes or less. If this is your first time, it could take you over an hour, even 2 hours to complete the first scarf. But don't be discouraged, because once you get the hang of it, it really does move along quickly. So we've knit our first row, and we're going to go ahead and move on to our second row. So to do the second row, we're going to move all the stitches over to our right arm. So we'll be holding the working yarn in our left hand this time, and we're going to take that first stitch, okay, pull it over and off of your hand, pulling up that working yarn and creating this new loop. Remember to turn that towards yourself and place that onto your right arm. And again, the first stitch is always kind of tricky to tighten, so push up that knot while pulling on the working yarn. Get it as tight as you can. And when you're arm knitting, you want to try to keep everything as tight as possible. That way the scarf looks fuller and the holes are smaller. Because if you have really big holes, it's going to look, all loose and just not very nice. So let's go ahead and move on to the second stitch on our left arm. Hold the working yarn in your left hand. Take that next stitch and pull it over and off of your hand, creating a new loop. Turn that towards yourself and place it onto your right arm. Tighten that as much as you can. And go ahead and knit the next stitch. Hold the working yarn in your left hand and pull that next stitch over and off, creating this new loop here. You're going to turn that towards yourself and place it onto your right arm. Tighten that up. Now let's move on to our next stitch. Pull it over and off, holding that working yarn in your left hand. Now you have a new stitch. Turn that towards yourself and place it onto your right arm and tighten it. And do that to the rest of the stitches on your left arm. Okay, so we've knit 2 rows, and this is what it looks like so far. You can see row 1 here and row 2 here, and it's just the basic knit stitch. So now we're going to move on to row 3, and we're just going to do the same thing as row 1. moving all of the stitches over to our left arm. And so remember to hold the working yarn in your right hand. Take that first stitch and pull it over and off, creating this new loop. Turn it towards yourself and place it onto your left arm, tightening the first stitch the way I showed you. So now we're going to knit our next stitch over to our left arm. So hold the working yarn in your right hand, pull that next stitch over, creating this new loop. Turn it towards yourself and place it onto your left arm. And go ahead and do that to the entire row. Remember to keep it nice and tight. Okay, that was our third row. So this is what we have. We're going to move on to our fourth row, moving all the stitches from our left arm to our right arm. So go ahead and hold the working yarn in your left hand this time. Take that first stitch and pull it over and off, creating this new loop here. Turn that towards yourself and place it onto your right arm. Tighten that up. And let's move on to the next stitch. Pull it over and off, holding that working yarn in your left hand. Create a new stitch there. You want to turn that towards yourself and place it onto your right arm. Tighten it up. And do that across the entire row. So now we have completed our fourth row. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to just continue doing that until you have your desired length of scarf.